Okay, so let's recap. Fivefold ministries, right? That's what we're talking about. That's what we've been talking about for a couple of weeks now. Several weeks now? 6 weeks now? 8 weeks now? Something like that. And the fivefold ministry, we decided a long, long time ago, in the beginning of all this, that the fivefold ministry was a charge to whom?
The church.
There you go, to everybody. Everybody, it's a charge to everybody, right? This is the fivefold ministry is the step directly after your initial induction to this super cool, super exclusive club to which we belong, right?
Woo!
That's right. The belief structure that we have, and the belief structure that we share, the belief structure that we use every day. Yeah, it is after our induction into our belief structure. This belief structure is the initial portions of the belief structure were very inclusive in that only people who were born into the Israelite tribe were allowed to be part of the club, right? You had to be born into it, you had to be circumcised if you were a male, and you had both your parents had to be born into it prior to you, and thereafter, then you were good. So only Abraham and all his descendants. So it was a very select group of folks, and they were very exclusive. A lot of people. Still a lot of folks. There was. And then Jesus came along and switched everything up on its head, and he said, okay, now everybody can get into it. Anybody, all you got to do is believe, right? As long as you believe, you are saved. You are saved from all terrible things. And actually, he wasn't really saving men. He wasn't really saving people from. Yeah, he wasn't. Definitely wasn't. He definitely didn't come with a sword ready to stab you. He wasn't here to save folks from the wrong. He was not here to save people from hell. He didn't come to save people from damnation. He didn't come to save people from suffering and turmoil. He came to save people
From themselves.
from themselves. It's kind of crazy. Because at this point, there was a bunch of law that was all imposed. Men decided, okay, we're going to change things up. We're going to use rules and regulations to make sure that everybody's falling in line. Well, that didn't work so well. Because it kind of went around. The pretty basic strategy was, you go out and party on a Saturday night, you get up on a Sunday morning, and you kill one of your goats, and you go. It's not cool. So, anybody can get in so long as you are sincere. That's the big thing. So, to expand this great, cool thing that we had, we started out some structure. The structure of the fivefold ministry. That is a structure in order for an organization to thrive. That's what we have here. Those guys right there are the different titles within, the titles and responsibilities within the fivefold ministry. We made the first one, the apostle. We decided, what was the apostle do? What's his job?
Oversee.
That's right. He oversees things. He is the one that is on his way out to set the foundation for the church. That's right. His job is to build something that was not there prior, which is a big thing. Body part that the pastor used was the foot. And for our castle, we decided that he was the surveyor or the foreman, right? And we had some Old Testament guys. There were Abraham and Samuel and David. Those guys were some Old Testament sort of apostles. The New Testament apostles, you guys know them, all pretty much everybody in the New Testament. We found that the prophet works in tandem very strongly with. The apostle works in tandem with the prophet. It had to. That's the pattern. One down is the one that you work real well with. One back is the one that supports you. Is the one on whom you rely. So the apostle needed to have very strong foundation, which is why he relied on the teacher. And all of them had somebody like that. And then they worked really, really strong with prophets. And all the old school guys, all the kings and all those guys way back in the day, they all had a prophet that was appointed to them for that particular time. So Samuel and David and Nathan and so on and so forth, right? And Ahab? Yeah, King Ahab had Elijah and, oh man, that was a rough spot for those guys. In any case, so we learned that the apostle had some very interesting personality traits, some positive ones, but some of the good ones. He's generally responsible, a very personally accountable person, so that he was very organized, just naturally organized, or naturally prioritized. And we all know that some folks tend to lean towards prioritization, and some folks tend to lean towards, I'm going to go as far as say discombobulation, but if you guys are like me, things are just kind of in disarray, rather. They also have some problematic traits with all that, and you usually find that an apostle has a tendency to be busy and kind of also be very brash and opinionated. A person who has that much responsibility has a tendency to take it and hold it and run with it very firmly. So you'll find very much that they can be kind of a hard ass. I apologize for the language, but it's true. It's true. Did that just take us back down to zero? I think it did. Correct. Sorry about that, folks. Sorry about that. I come from a kitchen standpoint, and the people who are up there, they were respected because they held themselves to a very strict standard. They did not allow anybody to slip from that standard, and that's something that you see in an apostle. Yes.
I like to learn new things.
Yes, they don't like to learn. Their way is the right way, and that's where that opinionated sort of iron sharpens iron. That's where you get that from, because you get a person with really strong personality. You get two strong personalities together, and there's going to be some growing, and it's usually going to be more honing than growing. Not more things added, but things are going to be very slowly pulled away until the edge is exposed. So. The next guy was a prophet, and we hung out with the prophet for a while. The prophet was a tough one. Decided that the body part of the pastor used the eyes, because they were supposed to see. In the castle, we decided that he was the archer, he was the watchman, he was the guy in the watchtower, he was the one that took care of the perimeter, right? And following our pattern, the prophet relied very heavily on the apostle. Had to, because if there wasn't there wasn't a perimeter already established, then there's nothing for him to guard, right? And they worked very well in working in tandem with the evangelists. And we'll get into that a little bit today. The evangelists together with the guys that go out, right? So the prophet's got to kind of watch those guys. So, this one we decided was a particularly wary calling. It was a very heavy calling. See, where the apostle was taking personal accountability for their charge, that means there's a difference between responsibility and accountability. Accountability is what someone expects of you. Right? So, it takes is that right? Or did I have that backwards? Accountability and responsibility. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So, accountability is what somebody expects from you. The group is expecting something out of you. So you often find that the apostle was usually fighting with the people around him, having to make sure to drive things forward. The prophet takes personal responsibility for the church. Responsibility. That's not what people expect of you, but that's what you expect of yourself. So you find that whereas the apostle fights outside with the people, they get into scuffles and tussles, and there's that iron sharpening iron with the people around them. The prophet was very inward focused. The prophet, when they have a fight, it's usually inside with themselves. And that has a tendency to lead towards some really interesting personality traits. This type of person generally doesn't speak too often. But when they do, they're particularly authoritative. They're very firm in what they believe. They're a person that is very introspective. And because they're introspective, that means that they're having that constant dialogue within themselves. And it makes them analyze things just naturally. And that gives them the appearance of a lot of intelligence. That doesn't necessarily mean they're not intelligent. But it makes them look even smarter because they're always thinking about stuff, right? You have to analyze God's word. See, the human being wants to understand, but the spirit needs to just accept it. And sometimes those things don't really match up. You have to fight with yourself about it. So the prophet also tends to weigh out all the consequences before they even show up. So you'll see them kind of anxious sometimes, just not that fast, twitchy nervous, but that just kind of internal, okay, something's coming, sort of anxious. You know, the calm before the storm. You have a tendency to see that on the face of the prophet quite often. And that's only in the initial portions. Once the decision is made, and once they have the word, and once it's deciphered inside of them, they're going to follow it completely straight as hard as they can, despite the circumstances, right? They have a tendency to come off as particularly timid, even though, when it's necessary, they will be very confident in what they're doing. They also lean towards being a dark and tormented sort of person. When you kind of know what's coming, and you tell somebody about what's coming, and then you see that despite all your efforts to try to steer them, they do something else, you kind of take it personally. And it makes you think, and it makes you almost regret, you know? I'm sure all of you parents out there, especially since it's Mother's Day, you mothers that have given some of your daughters or sons some advice, you're like, hey, I got this thing going on, I already know what's going on, I already know what's going to happen, this is what's going to happen, this is what you need to do. They do something else, and then they're suffering. And it's kind of rough. So, they come off as that. They also come off as a bit reclusive, kind of off by themselves. But that can be a good thing because that makes him very patient sometimes. Remember, we read about Elijah, and Elijah was told to get up until he was made, in fact, quite literally coaxed. Like the angels actually fed him and said, "You need to eat this stuff. Get up and go and do it." So the angels came and coaxed him and made him go to the mountain of God, to Mount Sinai. And while he was there, God said, "Wait for me to speak." And there was fire, and God wasn't there. And there was a wind, and God wasn't there. And there was an earthquake, and God wasn't there. And then he said, and then the word says, and then there was a stillness. And that's where God was. So the prophet has to be very keen in his ear. That's a very difficult thing. But that makes him patient. Today we talk about the evangelist. Now, up until right now, as we've been talking about the foundations of the church, we've been talking exactly about those things, the actual foundations of the structure. We've been talking about going out and scoping out an area. The king would come to the person who's going to be the foreman, who's going to be in charge of it, and he would say, "I need you to expand my borders in this direction." And that's really all he was getting, right? So this person had to go out and go in that direction, had to go out and expand the borders. Now, in the time of kings and queens, kingdoms butted up right next to each other, the same as countries do nowadays. America, the United States of America shares a border directly with Canada, directly with Mexico, right? And they're touching, right? On the East Coast, West Coast, there's neutral area, the oceans. Nobody owns the oceans, right? But there are border lands that quite literally, I'm on one, I'm on the other. So, and that's how it was back in the day. So if the king said, "You're going to expand that way," you are now in somebody else's territory, and you're supposed to expand into this territory. So it's a really difficult thing, right? You're expected to meet some headway. Okay, so that's the beginning portion of the foundation, right? Go out, expand it, find a good spot, make sure it's fortified, make sure it's something that can be easily protected, right? Establish the perimeter. The perimeter is established, set the prophet up. Now we have something. Now that the prophet and the apostle are kind of finished with the initial portions of the work, we have a thing. We have something that can be called like a main portion, like a home space, a 0, 0, 0, if you will, if you're thinking geometry. That's an axis, essentially, right? What's that word? The green zone. Yeah, let's go with that. If I'm going to say I need you to go out and then come home, we need to have a home to come back to. That's what these guys established, right? So now that we have this establishment, we have to start pushing outside of that. See, when the king said, "Go out and expand my borders," he didn't mean, if this is the border, take one step right there and then build a tower right there. That's where the castle's going to be. He meant walk way out here, and then in the middle of what you tend to expand, that's where we're putting this castle. That's where we're putting what's going on, right? So now we've got a nice big radius of area outside of the castle, and that is going to be the king's. Remember we said, the king said, "Go out and take care of that," right? That means that we're in somebody else's territory. There are other people who do not know that this is the new king for the area. So, that's where the evangelists come to. See, the evangelist relies very heavily on the prophet because the evangelist's job is to step outside of the perimeter. In order to know where you're going, you need to know, in order to know you're going to be safe, you have to make sure that you have a good prophet to be out looking out for you so that he knows, don't go that way, lots of stuff going that way. Don't go this way, it could be dangerous because I can't see. Start over in this direction, I can cover your back, right? That's why we rely so heavily on the prophet. And they work really, really strongly with pastoral. We'll get into that a little bit next week. Let us start with Acts 22:14. We're going to talk about the actual call. So, somebody, give me a clicky there. Yep, we got it. Sir? All right, so I, as a big fan, decided that since it was May the 4th, I had to sneak in a slide of Star Wars.
Yes.
This is, so, in relation to the king, the evangelist was somebody who worked very tightly with him. It was kind of like, as we were talking about when we were talking about the way that the pastor used it. What was pastor, or does anybody remember? Let's go with that. what part of the body the evangelist was? The mouth. Is that correct, Pastor? Who does this go to?
No.
The nose.
The nose. Like a shark? The nose in the mouth? All right, here. You get one anyways. Just by default. The nose. The nose. It smells the blood. I was thinking the mouth. My bad. Yeah, it was my fault. Oh, so, excuse me. In relation to the castle, this is not this person, as they're working with the king, would be somebody within the king's council, but somebody very particular within the king's council. This would be the person who is most involved with public relations. This is the guy who understands public relations. Yes, this is the marketer. This is the guy. So remember, we said the king has said, "Okay, you're expanding my borders." So now we're in somebody else's territory. At this point, it's just short of occupation. That means somebody who you didn't know, who has no establishment with you, who has nothing going on with you, is all of a sudden in charge. And all good kings knew, way, way, way back in the day, that in order for you to have success within your kingdom, you have to have the people on your side. Right? That is what the evangelist's job is in regards to the castle. What was it? Acts 22 and 14. Let's see here. I'm reading the New Century Version. He said to God, "Our ancestors chose you." The God of our ancestors chose you long ago to know this path, to see the righteous one, and to hear words from him. You will be his witness to all the people, telling them about what you have seen and heard. Now, why wait any longer? Get up, be baptized, wash your sins away, and trust in him to save you. The job of the evangelist is pretty much right there. We were chosen long ago for this task, to see the righteous one and to hear his words from him. You will be his witness to all the people, telling them what you have seen and what you have heard. That's the evangelist's job. Your job is not to, this is something that folks really don't catch a lot. See, a lot of times what happens, you know, let's get into that. A lot of times what happens is, do you remember I was talking about the apostle? The apostle is the foreman. Just like the foreman in any place, the foreman knows a bit about carpentry. The foreman knows a good bit about electricity. The foreman knows a good bit about surveillance. The foreman knows a good bit about a lot of things. He is not necessarily a master in those things. He relies on other people to get the details, but he's got to know a good bit about it. So when we're talking about the apostle now, the apostle knows a good bit about being, or how, anyways, it should work, how a prophet, how and what a prophet does, how and what an evangelist does, how and what a pastor and a teacher does, right? And occasionally what happens is that in the beginning portions, like we know about the apostle, who's brash, who's opinionated, who has a tendency to go out and just do things, get stuff done the way he wants to do them, he likes to be the one to go out and be the evangelist also. And so you end up with an evangelist who has a very brash and opinionated way about them. You end up with an evangelist who's got that iron sharpens iron sort of hard but this phrase that I used earlier. Sort of that real firm personality about them. So you end up not so much with an evangelist that said right here, like we just read, that your job is to witness the righteous one that we just saw and then tell people about them. But you got the guy who's walking up and saying, you have no option but to be Christian now. Like we said earlier, the king should know that is not how you get the people on your side. You're not going to have a successful kingdom unless you have the people on your side, right? Let's talk for a moment again, just a little bit. Let's go to Isaiah 6:1. Remember how it said that he relies on the prophet. I got a little bit ahead of myself. Isaiah 6:1.
So the apostle is meant for the church. Is that what you're saying?
The apostle is meant for the church. The evangelist is meant for the people. The evangelist is meant for the people. That's right. Remember, he walks up, he's in the castle. The evangelist, 6:1. The evangelist will leave the castle. The evangelist's job is to leave the castle and to show people what he's seen. Isaiah 6:1. We're going to actually go back a second because I missed this and I wanted to touch on it before I move too far further. Remember we said that the evangelist has to rely very heavily on the prophet, right? We have to know where he's going. The prophet has to be able to see what's going on and say, okay, this is a safe place. You have to have a good prophet with a sharp eye that knows what's happening. The evangelist will come to the prophet and say, where am I going? And that's how he relies on him. So let's talk about this guy. Isaiah here, 6:1. In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord sitting high on his throne, and a long road full. And you know what? I'm going to read this out of the King James Version. I love the New Century Version because it's so easy to read. But sometimes it's the word plays, it's just beautiful the way it was put out in the King James Version. In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord sitting upon a throne, high and lifted up, and his train filled the temple. Above it stood seraphims. Each one had 6 wings. The twain covered his face, and the twain that covered his feet, and the twain that could fly. And one cried to another, saying, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is filled with his glory. And the post of the door moved at the voice of him that cried, and the house was filled with smoke. And he said, Woe is me, for I am undone, because I am a man of unclean lips. Now, this is Isaiah speaking. Isaiah was a prophet, but we're talking still. It's a prophet and evangelist work really well together, right? We're getting into this one. Woe is me, for I have unclean lips. For mine eyes have seen the King and the Lord of hosts. Then one of the seraphims flew to him, having a live coal in his hand, which he took with tongs from off the altar. And he laid it upon his mouth and said, Lo, this has touched thy lips. Thine iniquity is taken away, and thy sin is purged. Also I heard the voice of the Lord saying, here we go, listen to this. Now remember, in our analogy, the king is God. So here, and also I heard the voice of the Lord saying, Whom shall I send? Who will go for us? And then I said, Here I am, send me. The prophet and the evangelist have got to work together. In fact, the evangelist relies very heavily on the prophet. Remember, the prophet's call sits super, super heavy on just the very being of the prophet. They're dark and tormented because this is such a heavy call. They're reclusive and patient. There's an internal battle constantly with what they're struggling with, what they are, who they are, and what they hear, and what they need to say. But the prophet's job, the apostle's job is to get this thing established. The evangelist's job is to go out, but the prophet's job is to be true to what he knows is correct. You guys following me? Regardless of who it's going to hurt, regardless of how it's going to feel, regardless of the possible turmoil that it could cause, your job is not to decide what needs to happen. And that's what makes it really, really difficult. That's why you always see prophets so hurt, because you go out and you do and you pour into it, but your job is not to make the people do something. Your job is simply to present the opportunity and allow them to make the choice for themselves. Whichever they go. Whichever they go. This is what the truth is. This is what I understand. Now you make the choice. So when he says now we work with the evangelist has to rely heavily on the prophet, because the prophet's job is to do those things. If the prophet's doing it right, then the evangelist should be okay. The evangelist should know that if you go into this area, you're not going to do what you want there, as long as he's listening to the prophet. If you go in this direction, you should be fine, because it's safe over in that direction. Those people there are really ready to hear it. These people over there need something from you. Don't go to this part because I don't know what's going on. All right? So, that was the prophet and the evangelist. I'm sorry, I kind of got ahead of myself. Let's jump back to the responsibility of the prophet. So, the responsibility of the prophet then is... Did you have a question? Okay. So, the responsibility of the prophet then... the evangelist then, is to actually step outside of the confines of the castle. The apostle set the foundation. The prophet maintains the perimeter. But the evangelist's job is to leave the protection and rely on the protection of the prophet in order to get to speak to the people. The evangelist is for the people, whereas the prophet and the apostle are directly for the church. So this is a really hard shift right here. This is the one right in the center. The first two over here on the left, the first two are up. Can you go back a step for me? Back slide. The first two, the apostle and the prophet. Thank you, sir. If you see, we got 5 of them. The first two, the apostle and the prophet, those ones are the church itself. The evangelist is the one in the middle. It goes back and forth. The teacher and the preacher are for the people who come inside. So you've got 1 for the church, 2 for the church, 2 for the people inside of the church, and 1 directly for the world. That's the evangelist. So the evangelist is a very, very dangerous call. You have to be super careful. And occasionally, like I said, you got the prophet who can do all of this, and who can evangelize, but occasionally you end up with that prophet who's got a little bit of a sharp tongue. Everybody's given the sword of the Spirit right at the beginning. As soon as you're armed, you're ready to go, you got your shield of faith, you have your helmet of the knowledge now, the understanding of God, you get the sword of the Spirit. The first thing that the apostle wants to do is, I know what this sword can do. Start hitting people with it, right?
I don't like that shield.
That's right. Yeah, shields, that's right. Sometimes a good defense is a better offense, right? Not necessarily, because human beings, remember, our job is not to make somebody do something. It is to present what we have, right? This is the responsibility of the prophet, or of the evangelist. The responsibility of the evangelist, let's all turn to 1 Corinthians 9:16. The responsibility of the evangelist is to reach the people. Reach the people. Reach the people. What does that mean? You got 2 key words in there. Reach and the people. Let's start at the end. Let's see. What did I say? Corinthians. 16. So, you have to reach the people. 9:16. Telling the good news does not give me any reason for bragging. Telling the good news is my duty, something that I must do. How terrible will it be for me if I were not to tell the good news? If I preach because it's my own choice, I have a reward. But if I preach because it is not my choice to do so, I'm only doing the duty that was given to me. So what reward should I get? This is my reward, that I tell the good news and I offer it freely. I do not use my full rights in my work of preaching the good news. I am free and belong to no one, but I make myself a slave to all the people to win as many as I can. To the Jews I become like a Jew, and I win the Jews. I myself am not ruled by the law, but to those who are ruled by the law, I become a person who is ruled by the law. I did this to win those who are ruled by the law. To those who are without the law, I become like a person who is without the law. I did this to win those people who are without the law. But really, I'm without God's law. I am without the law because I am unruled by Christ's law. And to those who are weak, I become weak so I can win the weak. And to those who are, and I have become all things to all people. I have become all things to all people so I can save some of them in any way possible. Your job as an evangelist, if you are an evangelist, is to reach the people. Who are the people? Let's start with that. Let's dissect that. Reach the people. Who are the people?
The unsaved.
I'm sorry?
The unsaved.
The unsaved are the people.
The circle,
Good job.
the
Right.
people that are
Outside of the castle, exactly. The people, we expanded our borders, right? We moved into foreign territory all of a sudden. These people here are now, this is the thing. This is what's crazy. Let's talk about this medieval time castle thing, because this is actually, thank God for this one, man. I don't know where it came from. I guess I know where it came from. But it just makes so much sense to me when I'm up here and I'm thinking about it. The castle. If you expand your borders and you are now in this castle, that means you are now within your own territory. But the people outside of the castle don't know it yet. They're not your people yet, right? That means that they don't respect you yet. That means that they don't understand you yet. That means that it is your job to make them your subjects. Now, they are already under your rule. You have authority. God has authority since we've been established a church and we've pushed out our borders. All of this now belongs to God. The people still don't know, though. And everybody knows that you get more bees with what? Honey. You don't run out and start hitting people with a stick and make them do anything. That is not God. God did not say, yea, therefore, I am standing at the door and I'm going to kick it in and make you convert. This is not how it goes.
Oh, that's another reason.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's God. I can't even come up with a good phrase. That's terrible. That's not how we win people. Yeah, that's not how we win people. That's forcing people. That's not okay. That's not a good relationship. Has anybody ever been forced to do something? Like at your job, you have to do this or you're fired. How do you do it? Just enough to get it done, right?
Yep.
I'm doing enough so I don't lose my job. That is not a good employee. That is not how you build up a good business. You have to reach the people. Everyone is the people. This is the other thing. So, we decided that we're pushing out the borders, right? What happens if some of the people have been exercised to this area? They were already within your borders, and then they went over to the other country. And then you expanded into them. So let's talk about that for a second. Way back in 1830, like 8 through 1846 or something like that. Mexico had won its independence from Spain at this point. And Texas had established itself as a sovereign nation. Texas was no longer part of it decided it held its own borders. It decided it was no longer part of Spain. It was not going to be part of America, right? It was its own thing. So at the time, later thereafter, it became part of Mexico. Texas was part of Mexico. 1844, 1845 or so, it became part of America, flopped back to part of Mexico, came back to part of America. So here's the thing. There were Native American Indians at that point that were living in the Texas-Oklahoma area, and they pushed south into Mexico. Soon thereafter, so at this point, they were no longer Americans. They were in Texas. They were in a sovereign area. They were in Mexico. They were in a liberated place, right? And then America decided, all right, Texas is now ours now. So they're back in America all of a sudden, right? So you left America, and then America chased you. That's what happened there. They do cook really well. So this is what I'm talking about. So what happens with the people who were in God's kingdom, left God's kingdom, and then God's kingdom expanded around them? Are they Christian? Well, see, when they were Jews, it was by birth. That's who they were. Are they Christian? Christianity is a choice. Who's to say? That's not our choice. That's not our job. So what I'm getting at is that the evangelist, when I say to reach the people, the evangelist goes out for the world, but the evangelist is also for the Christian. The evangelist is for everybody. The evangelist is for the people. Every single human being. Sometimes you need to be quickened again, and sometimes an evangelist will help you do that. Anybody ever? I work out. I like to exercise as much as I can. Anybody ever do that, or work, or do a project or something, and lose motivation to do it? And then somebody comes up and, hey, have you done this yet? Or hey, why don't you do this? Or, man, you remember that one time, and you just get like inspired to go right back at it just as hard? Yeah. Sometimes our walk as believers, it's not easy. Because we get inducted and we're all like, oh, this is so great, I'm Christian now, and God saves me. Now, hold on a second, nobody really likes me anymore, right? And it's hard, because you have to live a particular way. And the body, the human body, the brain, we don't sometimes want to do that. We want to do whatever we want. We want to do whatever feels good. I want to eat bad. I want to party. I want to make a bunch of noise. And it can be disheartening. And sometimes you need to be quickened. And that's the evangelist's job. The evangelist's job is for the people. So reach the people. Okay, so we know what the people are. Everybody. Christian, not Christian, outside of borders, inside of borders, right? All good. What does it mean to reach them? We decided just shortly ago that it does not mean to go and knock on their door and force them. That's right. It does not mean to hit them with a stick.
You have to kind of become them.
You have to become them. That's exactly what we just read. I am a Jew for the Jews. I'm a Gentile for the Gentiles. I'm weak for the weak. And I do this not because I'm boasting. That's what Paul said. He said, I'm not doing this because it's my job to make myself look awesome. But I do this so that I can win some of the people. Win some of the people. He said that word. He said some. Some of the people. Think about that for a second. When you go out in your job, if you're given a job and you're really proud of the things that you do,
let's say you're an artist. Your job is to paint a picture. At the end of the painting, you want it to look like what you wanted it to, right? Let's say you're a mechanic. Your job is to fix cars. At the end of your job, at the end of your tenure, at the end of your position, you want to know that whatever you're working on was fixed. It's not going to bust again, right? In my job, I'm a network administrator. I like to know that at the end of the day, whatever was busted and not communicating is fixed and communicating again. He said that I do this so that I can save some of them. This can make a person very sad because you have to remember that built into this contract, you are not going to be able to save everyone. As the evangelist, it is imperative that we all understand that your job is to become the person to reach the people, to make them consider it. And that's tough because the evangelist, where the prophet feels the emotions of God and feels the heart of God, the evangelist feels the spirit of the people. You guys hear me? That's tough sometimes because God is fairly consistent. He's a fairly consistent guy. I mean, he has to do different things at different times. And way back in the day, he was a little heavy-handed. You know, that's his thing. We were kids. We needed spanked every so often. Nowadays, he's much more forgiving. He's much more, okay, look, you grew up, you know what's going on. I can only help so much. Your job is to make your choice, but I'll kind of lead you along if you want me to. People are finicky. A person can be artistic and loquacious and eloquent. They can be all these awesome things, creative, and all this just calm and great to have a conversation. But people, herds of people, you know what happened with lots of people come around? Anybody, yeah, you get, somebody says anything, and everybody's screaming and shouting, and folks are running, and everybody builds up on you, and all you hear is one thing and one thing on, and nobody's making sense, but this is your job. As the evangelist, your job is to love those guys, to work with those guys, and to want to become them so that you can show them, so that they can consider. Not so that you can force them, so that they can consider. That's the big thing. Your job is to reach the people. That's all you got to do. Go out and be part of the people. Leave the confines of the.
It can be uncomfortable too.
God awful. Let's talk about some of them. In fact, let's go through some examples of some of the good and terrible things. Somebody hit me. If anybody in the Bible, who's an evangelist from the Bible? Somebody. Paul.
Yeah.
Who said Paul?
Actually,
I didn't say Paul, but I'd say
I would probably have to say all the apostles of the first books.
They did. Yeah, they did. Yeah. They were apostles. Yes, but they were the first evangelists.
They went out. They didn't even die.
Who's that? Jesus.
Yeah.
Ooh, look at that. Jesus, he was interesting. He was an apostle. He was a prophet. He was an evangelist. He was a teacher. He was a preacher. Sir?
You did wrong.
first one after Jesus was Thomas.
Thomas was appointed. That's right. You guys remember? Anybody? How,
Would it be Mary Magdalene? Perhaps? Maybe?
No.
No.
What
Because
was
she went and told the apostles.
Okay. She did. You're right. Yep. She did go out and she did bring back. Yep. That's good. I didn't even consider that. That's good stuff. I like it. That's learning. All right. So.
Thomas went first and he got stoned. And he knew it.
Oh yeah.
He knew he was going to get
He
stoned.
knew he was going. Well, still walk right into it. That's messed up, isn't it? He knew my job is to go out and to reach these people. So he went out and he reached them, and he's killed for it. Killed for it. Philip, you guys remember Philip?
Yeah.
The cat that hung out with the Ethiopian eunuch guy. Yeah, he was. That was straight up evangelism. In fact, he was listed of the 12, of the 13, who was including Barnabas. They also said, and Philip, the evangelist. Even said that in there.
wow.
What do you guys think of any Old Testament evangelists? Who's in Exodus though? Moses. Moses, absolutely. The big un. That's right. Moses had it rough, boy, didn't he? Lord of mercy. I will tell you about poor Moses. See,
It was like God never backed off.
it's that poor guy. Let's talk about some of the personality traits. In fact, let's go to Exodus. Let's start at 32 and 30. Boy, poor Moses. Moses,
Oh man.
he kind of didn't have a choice. Remember back in the day we said God, way back when, he was heavy-handed, right? This is back in the beginning of the church, so he had to make sure that we were setting up some of the real stringent rules. And God bless it, that's something that every young person needs, right? They need some level of structure. Our job is structure. Lay these guys out and say, all right, Moses, I want you to go. I want you to get yourself up. I want you to take your wife, or he would say, I want you to leave the tent and take off from where you are and go and tell the Pharaoh what? Let my people go. That was it. He gave him that one thing. And what did Moses say?
I can't
Oh, man, come on. You know I don't talk right. And, I'm not even really sure.
I got a
I
car.
he said exactly.
My
He said,
daughter's
all
got a
right.
basketball
The first thing he said was,
Wow.
what am I even going to say? He said, all right, say these words. Let my people go.
Yeah.
Didn't he stutter?
You have a
Would
question about it?
Aaron be considered an evangelist because he's the one who got to do all the talking?
That's
Yeah.
very true. It is very nice. So in regards to Aaron and Moses, whereas Moses had to do Aaron had to do the talking, Moses had to tell him where to go. What's the relationship between those two? Prophet and evangelist. You guys are seeing the patterns. There we go. It's good stuff. All right, so Moses, I don't know what to say. Okay, say this. All right, Moses, now go. Go tell these guys what to do. I don't want to go by myself, right? Okay, fine. Take Aaron. Now leave, right? Oh, God, can't you just pick somebody else? And God got mad at him, didn't he? Now, back in this day, you guys remember, I said God is a little heavy-handed. So when God got mad at him, I can imagine that was not a particularly comfortable situation for poor Moses. Yes, ma'am?
Okay, I'm sorry. I
No
totally
problem.
just had a basic
Aha
thing.
moment.
Aaron was an evangelist also because after when he did the golden calf, because he felt the spirit of the people, because, yeah.
This is good stuff. We're learning. Absolutely. Aaron knows the folks. And at that point, he became a sinner. So that he can reach for the sinners. What's that? That's what the people wanted. We're going to we'll touch on that a little bit. Let's go back to Exodus. Let's talk about some of these traits. Somebody read Exodus 32:30 through 33 for me, please. Anyway.
I will.
Hit me.
32.
It's 32:30.
And it came to pass on the morrow that Moses said unto the people, Ye have sinned a great sin, and now I will go up unto the Lord, peradventure I shall make an atonement for your sin. And Moses returned unto the Lord and said, O this people have sinned a great sin, and have made them gods of gold. Yet now, if thou wilt forgive their sin, and if not, blot me, I pray thee, out of thy book, which thou hast written. And Moses said unto the Lord said unto Moses, Whosoever has sinned against me, him will I blot out of my book.
So, you walk down. This part, there's some really funny parts of the Bible, but this one just cracks me up because I can imagine Moses just dealing with these guys. Come on, guys, seriously, really? This is what I have to do? Okay, so let's set the tone. These guys are already out of Egypt, right? They're sitting at the mountain, right? Mountain of God. Moses has to go upstairs and talk to God, right? So we're cool. That's where we are. How long was he up there talking to God? 40 days and 40 nights. It's not too. That's what, a little more than a month, right? They were gone. What happened while they were gone? 40 days. That's not really in the grand scheme of things. That's really not that far.
They went psychic.
Oh, they were tearing it up. I'll tell you what. What's that?
Also shows a prophet around to
Yeah.
keep the evangelists in line.
Mm-hmm.
It went crazy.
Oh yeah, they lost it, boy. You know what? When I got out of house, when I had some freedom to myself, first thing I wanted to do, smelt metal. Wait, what? They wanted to make a golden calf.
Yeah.
There was not a lot of technology back then, right? Everything was done. If you're going to melt gold, you have to use fire. And you had to use a hammer to beat it up. And he made it into a calf. How long do you think that would have taken?
Maybe 9 days.
About 30 or so days. He was gone for like a week. They're like, screw it, we're back to the beginning. Make a calf, quick. They didn't even wait. I can imagine, I bet you his food was like, he probably got up, Moses got up and left his food there, and it was probably still okay. They didn't even wait for anything to rot yet, and they were making golden calves and.
Well, they had thought in their minds that they could make the calf reflect God that saved them. They thought they were doing right.
Yeah.
That's why one of the commandments was no graven images, because they wanted to focus
Right, your
Well,
job
if you
is
read- If you read verse 1, though, it says the people saw that a long time had passed, and Moses did not come down from the mountain.
Well, they're like little kids, though.
Long time ago.
I think-
Well,
there's this picture on the internet. There's this picture on the internet. It cracks me up when I see it. There's a picture of a dog, and he's in like a back room, and there's a big old tub of dog food, and it's tipped over, and there's water all over the place, and there's the trash is tipped over, and the dog is wrapped up and all tangled up in the blinds because he ripped them down. He's trying to get it, and on the bottom of the caption, he's just kind of looking at the owner who took the picture of it, and at the bottom of the caption says, "I thought you were gone, or I thought you were going to be gone forever and ever and ever and ever and ever," and I panicked. That's what happened. These poor guys, they were. Moses said, "Just, I'll be right back," and you know, like a little kid, like, I don't know what to do. And that's what these poor guys, these folks did that.
But to be fair, how long were they involved in Egyptian culture?
That's true. They were not. It's being freed. This is something. It's so liberating. You're set free. Sometimes that's terrifying. Human beings like structure. Sometimes having your own thing to do and knowing that's not. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm terrified of having children because I can barely take care of myself. You want to put me in charge of the life of another human being? You must be nuts. Yes, sir.
You've seen that today, though. Prisoners who went in like really young,
Mm-hmm.
and then they get out when they're
They're institutionalized by
70,
that point.
almost 80, and they get out. Some of them go and rob or
They don't know how
went
to.
to a gas station, he bust the windows, and he threw all kinds, and just waited.
Yeah, and wanted to go back. That's structure. Being free can be terrifying sometimes. It's true. So anyways, let's go back to some of the traits. This can be a good thing or a bad thing. You'll find that when you're dealing with people in particular, you have lots of traits that can be both good and bad. And one of the biggest ones for the evangelists is that they're very empathetic to human beings. They feel for the people. They feel what's going on. They feel sorry for the people. And that's why Moses said, "Dude, are you guys serious right now? Oh, I hate you guys. God, I'm sorry, man. Don't do anything bad to him." He felt sorry for them. Even though they messed up, even though they were wallowing in their own filth, even though he was gone for like 3.5 minutes and they ripped the whole place apart, he still felt sorry for him. And he said, "God, please forgive him. Please, please, please forgive him." So that's one of the things. Very empathetic. And then he said something else thereafter. He said, "But if you remove me from these people, just remove me from history. Wipe me out. I want nothing to do with it." He kind of tested God a little bit right there, right? God knew that this was the guy for the job. If you have,
Well, he kind of caught God in his own word. If
Yeah.
he would have done that, would have nothing happened.
Exactly. So I'm a supervisor at my job, and occasionally I'll have to take small groups of my guys and have them do a project because especially because it spans multiple work shifts. So like, okay, we got 3 of you guys, first shift, second shift, third shift. I need you guys to do this because I'm going to need all 3 of you guys to do that at once, and I need you to be in charge of them. And I'll take off and I'll come back, and it's all in a shambles and everything's messed up, and I want to go to the leader. It's like, "You know what, dude? What happened?" I picked that guy because he had the leadership qualities that I wanted. He was responsible, accountable. And I know the other 2 guys are not sometimes. So here's the thing. If he says, "Okay, fine, forget all this noise, I'm out of here," who am I going to make the leader then? And that's what happened here. Moses is like, "Who are you going to make the leader if I leave?" So he kind of tested God. See, that's something else that goes on. He knew that he was going to come out on top of that situation. He pushed God a little bit, but he knew that he was going to be all right. He was very optimistic. That's something else that you find about the evangelist. The evangelist can take a situation, crummy as it may be, and have a tendency to spin a light on it and make lemonade out of lemons. That's something that's very important because, like we said earlier, the people are drawn by honey. Like bees are drawn by honey, not vinegar. So sometimes you got to coax it out of them. You got to become like them. You got to be sweet to them. Very optimistic. And a person who's got a sunny disposition is going to draw more people than a person who's sourpuss and just, oh, yeah, this ain't no good. Oh, God, welcome to my world, blah, 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 right? No, I'm hanging on that person. Yes.
Miracles will follow. There's the fivefold ministry, and then people try to identify where their place could be at. One of the big ones is miracles will follow an evangelist.
Most often you will find.
Wonders and miracles.
Yes. Well, you will very often find that, and I was actually going to get to that, but I guess I'll just jump ahead. But yes, often signs and wonders will follow an evangelist, because again we have to draw the people. Yes.
Growing up, my grandmother would say, yeah, a person may be like an apostle or evangelist or teacher, but you know what they all have in common?
That's right. Lord God, number one, the King, right? Awesome. Good stuff. So, yes. Miracles, signs, and wonders. Sometimes. Why? Because you got to get the people around, right? Like Moses had all those crazy things.
Give a little taste.
Yes, this is a little taste. This is a little taste.
Because if you're in the world, people will watching you.
That's very true. Let's continue on with more positive personality traits. You will find very often that the evangelist has a tendency to be loquacious. They have the gift of gab. They speak, and when they speak, it's expressive, and it kind of comes out, and it draws the folks in. That's just they're not trying to be overly expressive. That's just how it comes out. Because people like to I like the things that he has to say, right? You will find that this person, because of those things, has a tendency to draw in groups of people. Not just one or two, but people, bunches of folks, right? Lots of folks come and they listen to him. Let's talk about this for a second. Reading online there, and it said that there are lots of phobias out there: arachnophobia, fear of spiders, fear of heights, fear of falling, fear of dying by yourself, and all sorts of crazy stuff, right?
Wow.
Yeah, clowns. Look at this guy. He's head done like clowns. Fear of clowns, right? I don't know what the word for that is. I'm sure it's right. What's that? Snakes. There you go. Lots of folks are afraid of things. Did you know that the most had fear? I can't think of a good word. The fear that is striking to the most people in the world is the fear of public speaking. Most people are stricken with this fear out of all other fears. Snakes, scared of dying, scared of fire. Doesn't matter. Everybody, lots of folks are scared of people speaking public. Does that mean that you are not an evangelist if you are afraid to speak in public? No. Sometimes people don't like to have a lot of responsibility, but they are the most responsible, and that would be why they're an apostle. Sometimes people don't like to have to be authoritative, and don't like to spread bad news, but they have to, and they do it, and they do a good job of it, and that makes them a good prophet. Sometimes you don't like to speak in front of people, but that does not necessarily mean that if you are an evangelist that you don't get to be an evangelist anymore. You don't get to opt out of that road. You're born with it. It's just how it is. That's something to keep in mind. So they draw folks into it. Let's go with some of the more problematic traits that the apostle has, or rather the evangelist has to deal with. So the job of the evangelist is to reach the people. Show them what God is. And God is huge. He's great. And that's why we were just talking about it. That's why sometimes you'll see signs and wonders. Moses was splitting Red Seas and sending out locusts at folks. And boy, that'd be awesome. I can think of a couple people I'd throw a locust at right now. Yeah. But when you have all that on top of you, when you have all that great authority, when God's got your back to that extent, on occasion, you will find that they kind of go, we're human beings, we're fallible. It'll go to your head sometimes. So, often, you have to be careful that you don't fall to pride. Every single one of those things will tear it up. But this one in particular, because whereas people find you responsible and accountable as an apostle, they look up to you. They look up to you for direction. Whereas for the prophet, people kind of are a little bit afraid of you. And even though you have the word of God, sometimes your internal turmoil kind of makes makes you want to not say something. With the evangelist, you have people actively seeking you out and trying to give you attention. And that can be very dangerous. Yes, sir?
I'm glad to know what you're saying, that God is with you.
God is with you.
So,
Mhm. That is right.
He opened the door.
He does. He does. He sends all these helpers for you. Yes, sir?
Speaking of pride, when growing up, my grandma, she was a proud Christian, but she would always say, give God your pride.
There you go.
Because if you keep the pride inside you, it's going to lead
It's
you to
going to
fall.
tear you up. Pride is so, I bet you that's like the first one of the sins that Satan likes to focus. Just give a little bit of pride. Just give a little bit of attention. That'll fix that. You know, we can handle this.
Pride that came before the fall.
Pride comes before the fall. That's right. Because pride tends to lend itself to a bit of narcissism on occasion. You guys know what narcissism is? Yeah, thinking you're big stuff.
Where you're
Loving
never
yourself. What's that?
Where you're never wrong.
Where you're not
Even
wrong.
though you think
really just loving
10
yourself.
wrong,
That's
it's
right.
still admit.
Just pride is so, yeah. So when you have all this stuff, all this great, cool stuff, and God's got your back, you can tend to, you got to be careful. Because occasionally, this pride, this narcissism will sneak up. And it can really cause you some problems because then things start to shift. What you were saying starts to shift a little bit to what people want to hear, not necessarily what they need to hear. See, in all of this, we've been drawing, we're optimistic, and we're empathetic, and we're loquacious, and we're gift of gab, and we can speak all these things. But up until right now, you haven't really had a charge other than just reach the people. That doesn't mean that you tell them what they want to hear, because that's not true. That's setting them up for failure. You never tell somebody, only good things are ever going to happen at some point. Especially when you have somebody who you need you need them to help you. You know what I'm saying? Oh, it's going to be super simple. Oh, it's going to be this and that. Oh, don't worry about it. That guy is perfect to work with. It's going to be a dream. Nobody's ever going to cause you problems. Christianity, that's not how it is. Our religion, our calls are heavy.
Yes.
So you're not allowed to just tell people what they want to hear. You still have an obligation. You still have an obligation to reach people, yes, but to make sure you're doing it with accurate information, right?
How about usually the evangelist will have a sign on his back where the enemy comes and attacks them
Give me that too.
all the time.
Quite often. And the other thing,
A lot of times, people don't like to hear the evangelist now. Well, you got things that you're not gonna like.
well, we gotta be, sometimes maybe that means that they're not as seasoned an evangelist as they think. Because a good seasoned evangelist will go to the right person in the right way. You get back in the 70s, 80s, or the 80s especially. Oh man, all over the place. The tele-evangelists. Yeah. Ooh, boy. Reaching out to all these people, and I'll tell you, boy, you get this out here. Best evangelist that I ever had was my mother. My mother was a great evangelist because all she did was just stay steady with her. Sometimes that's what people need, right? Evangelists, if this is your primary call. Also, a good high-called evangelist who has all of these great things and is very exercised, you will sometimes find has problems with relationships. Quite often. Why? You get all this attention all the time. And that pride sneaks in, that narcissism sneaks in. You start to think that you can kind of take your pick of whatever you want. And you want to go to the places that you want to go. And you want to speak to the people that you want to speak to. And then you want to speak to fewer people that you want to. And you want to spend more time with one person. And you want to spend more time with another person. Because this attention, it's so drawn. You got to be careful. Yes, sir.
If you're focusing on other people's salvation, that's kind of one of them things that
It's true.
you need to get distractions.
Remember how that's very true.
Right.
Remember how we were talking about how when we said liberation is not always, it's kind of scary sometimes. So when you get this salvation, somebody is freed from the sin that they have. Somebody's freed from the walk that they have. Sometimes Sometimes they want to cling to something else. And the person that led you to this freedom can be the person. And sometimes that can cause some problems with relationships. And you have to be very careful. That's the romantic relationships, business relationships, friendship relationships, all relationships you have to be careful with that sort of thing. Oh Lord, the Bible is just stricken with all manner of lady problems for some of those guys, man. Ooh.
With
Poor
Bible
David.
ministry, it's kind of hard to figure out because it's scary once you get the call.
It's true. These are college level classes. We are no longer in high school. You've graduated, you've made it through basic training, you have your shield, your sandals, you have your sword, you have your chest plate, your belt is on, you got everything in your hand. Now get out there and make it happen. That's where we are right now. We have surpassed the basic training. Let's keep on going. Remember we said that this is the transition. There's one in the middle, the interaction with people. So up until right now, all I've done is talk about personality traits. Let's talk about some of the reactions with the people. Let's go to Exodus 1, or rather 17:1. Exodus 17:1. Way back in the beginning, we're talking about our buddy. That's right, 17:1. So, 17:1. We're going to read Exodus 17:1, 1 through 4. Who are we talking about in Exodus? Moses, again, that's right. The big time old school evangelist, the original, number one, right? First guy. He had it rough. This is one of the things when you're working with people. The whole Israelite community left the desert of sin and traveled from place to place as the Lord commanded. They camped at Rephidim. There was no water for the people to drink. So what did they do? They fought with Moses. They didn't fight amongst each other. They didn't have any food. Who did they go to? Poor Moses. Yes.
I've heard these scriptures read before, and we often see the people complaining. And they are complaining, but you imagine they're going through the desert, moving, regardless of how many, some say there is, 100,000 or a million. You're still moving there with all your animals, all your livestock, and yourselves. Every place they stopped had water, except for this spot. So they weren't just complaining, they were scared.
Mm-hmm.
A couple days in the desert, you're done.
Mm-hmm. It's true. There's a rough spot. And especially what kills me is that up until right now, they were God's people. Right? They were still, okay, sure, yeah, they were in captivity, but all of them were still, oh, send us, Lord, help us. Oh, God, what now? Right? And who? They did. That's the thing. They didn't yell at God. They knew what was up with God. You don't talk to God. They went to Moses. Poor Moses. All the time, this guy. So they yelled at him. Said, give us some water to drink. And Moses said to them, why are you yelling at me? Why are you testing the Lord? The people said that we're so thirsty, and they grumbled against Moses. And they said, why did you bring us out to Egypt? Was it so you could kill us and our kids and our farm animals? Just thirst? Were you trying to kill us? Have you tried it? You brought us out there so we could die. Is that what you wanted? That's real messed up if you think about that. And Moses cried to the Lord and said, what are they going to do with these people that are ready to stone me? Your job as an evangelist is to reach the people. Sometimes your job as an evangelist, like we said earlier, the prophet says, go in this direction. It's safe there. Does that mean it's going to be easy? That means he knows what's out there. Think about that archer on the tower. I say, hey, I need you to walk outside, tear off running over to the tree line, grab those apples, and come back. Don't worry, it's safe that way. Why do you think that archer is up on that tower? Because something's out there. He's out there and he's ready to pick off whatever's going to get at you. He didn't say go out there because there are no wolves. What he could have easily meant was go out there, I can kill the wolf that's on its way after you on your way back. The evangelist is sent out. The evangelist's job is to reach the people and go in the direction the prophet said. But that does not mean that you're not almost going to die sometimes. You won't. You'll be okay as long as you're following the apostle, the prophet, and everybody is in line with God correctly. You'll be good. But that doesn't mean that you're not going to be completely safe all the time. Earlier we were talking about Paul. Paul said, "Oh, I'm telling you these things, and I become this person." And he said right at the beginning, he said, "I'm not doing it so I can be boastful." Why was Paul not boastful, though? Do you guys remember what he said? He said there's a reason that he's not boastful. Do you guys remember what it was? Anybody? He was stricken with something.
Thorns.
A thorn in the flesh. He wasn't boastful because God made sure he wasn't going to be boastful. Think about that for a second, man. Rough. Evangelist has a very, very tough answer. A very, very tough calling. Because you deal with people. And he said it right there. They said, "What am I going to do with these people?" They said, "Give us water. We're going to kill you. Give us some water." What did he do? He didn't have water. He's like, "Okay, here, take some water. No, he had to go to God to find out a way to get water. Right? What does that show us? That shows that sometimes people are going to expect you to know what they want you to know. But it is, as an evangelist, it is not your job to have all the answers. Right? There's a huge difference between using scripture for contextual, for context, in a situation. In the Bible it says these things and these things and these things. But to use the Bible to justify your own logic is completely different. Remember, you're not supposed to tell the people what they want to hear. Your job is to tell them the truth and to reach them, not tell them what they want to hear. So once using that sort of knowledge for wisdom is good, but if you're trying to justify your logic with that, you're attempting to bend the religion to your will. That's not your job. Your job is not to bend your religion to his will. No one needs to have all the answers. If they have all the answers, they'd be God. It's not okay. You guys following me? Okay, you can. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. There wasn't a question.
I was just wondering if you got called preachy when you're an evangelist.
Oh, yes. Sorry. Yep.
You can call that just being a Christian.
That's true. Oh, yeah. It's funny. I actually had a conversation with a buddy at work, probably like 3 weeks ago. We were talking this, we were going back and forth. Oh, yeah, I do that. Oh, man, I'll tell you I can do that. Oh, yeah, every once in a while. Back when I was a kid, man, blah, 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 blah. And he said something else, and he's like, "Man, that's why this and that's that, and I grew up Christian, and I had this and that happened. I hate all those guys, and none of them getting good, and there was this and there was that. And, oh, that's kind of messed up." I stopped talking. He goes, "Wait a second. Are you Christian? We can't be friends now? I mean, right? Because he was like, wow, you?
Yeah.
Dang, that's rough."
Get someone like that.
Exactly. It's like as if it was you. Really? I mean, what was that all about?
That's what that guy worked with over at. I've never had to tell anybody that I was a Christian. Not one time. They eventually figured out the rule. But he kept asking. And finally, one day he goes, "Are you a Christian?" I said, "Yeah, I don't believe it." And he goes, "Really? You?" He goes, "Well, the tattoos and all that." And he kept going on this and this. And he goes, I told him, "Do you ever wonder why I don't go to the strip club and to the bar and your bonfires? Because they get, from what you tell me, they get pretty crazy." "Oh, man, I thought you just didn't like me." I was like, "No, it's not that."
Well, that too, but
You can stand a shower.
You know what? Once they told me that they go to the strip club, they thought I was gay.
I can see it.
That's awesome. So nobody needs no one needs to have all the answers. So we learned from the evangelist the way to win a person is just to get them to consider, right? That's your job is not to logically force them into doing something. You don't make them believe what you believe. Your job is to just get them to consider, reach the people. See, challenge is that.
So the evangelist doesn't set up shop.
Correct.
Just your workshop
and back. Yeah, out and back. Go out with a prop tail, come back, wait for another direction from the prop. Out and back. Out and back. Right? You'll find these guys work together very, very, very often. So the thing is, your faith is going to be tested quite a bit. So something this is good and this is bad. Because it's like exercise. You lift weights, eventually the weights seem to get lighter. The weights aren't getting tested. But that doesn't mean that you're not going to be fatigued after that test. People are going to test your faith constantly, right? It's something to keep in mind. You have to allow it to seem like a challenge, not so much a challenge, but an opportunity for growth. And that's what Paul was saying earlier. Your job is to do these things so that I can win some of the people. And he defines winning some as a success.
That's so perfect to me. They put some.
Some of the people. It's okay to not win them all sometimes. Your job is not to make them do it. Right? Don't force them. All right. So that's the end of that one. We have some traits. So it's something to consider. Anybody, you guys, how many of us are generally empathetic towards people? Know what the people, how the people feel? Yeah. How many of us have a tendency to be optimistic, kind of a sunny disposition sort of person? There you go. See what I'm talking about? All right. Somebody that can speak, talk. It's easy to talk to folks. Yeah. Kind of loquacious. There you go. Somebody who has a tendency to draw people in. Elgin.
Snake.
Right.
Not perfect.
Yeah, nobody is. That's right. So yeah, draw those folks in. Maybe you're afraid to speak in public. Maybe you can't really get behind the pulpit and address a bunch of people. That doesn't mean that you're not an evangelist. Be careful though, because remember, occasionally you'll have had issues with relationships. Any of the folks that we were talking about have some issues with the relationships who decided we're kind of, maybe a tendency to be a little narcissistic. My way is the right way to do things. Right? All right? So there's something, and ultimately still, be inspiring to people around you. And folks like to hear what to say. But that means that on occasion you're going to be challenged. The things that you believe will be challenged. Yes.
I have a question.
Yes.
Pastor, quite often when you hear someone falter or fall hard, especially in like the Christian world, the Christian movement, a large percentage of them were evangelists that fell. You do hear pastors and things like that, but in the news or like in I get that focus on faith, and it says to pray for this evangelist because maybe they cheated or they got drunk a bunch of things, got caught up, and something real small which happened so bad. But it's always usually
it's because they have the knowledge. It's because they're in the focus of the people. The prophet, remember, they're real, they're kind of reclusive. The apostle, he's usually off in his office doing his thing all the time by himself. Evangelist is right in the middle of everything. Everybody's staring at you. And that guy does something you don't notice. As soon as this one guy messes up, he goes,
yeah, because that's brought down so many.
lots of them.
I looked it up.
And it's almost relationships.
Yeah, exactly.
All the time with these people. Yes.
Usually you find a different ministry getting into different types of things. But the apostle is usually caught with taking money from the church, running away with
The pastor's wife.
that type of thing.
Yeah.
Won't be a problem. It's because you get that attention.
Even in that magazine, the focus on faith, it says they don't put that in and they're not going down. It's there as a warning. If you were in one of these areas, they'll be bringing you.
That's why it says people should pray for their evangelists in the church. Because there's a lot of temptation. I know that I've seen some, and there are. And if you read, oh man, on that.
Actually, the church's responsibility is to lift up the pastor and evangelist.
To lift up the people.
The elders, lift them up. It's the church's responsibility to lead the people with prayer.
comments or concerns?